Welcome back. We are back here now at gridXdays for our final 4 sessions for this year. And I'm really looking forward to these 4 sessions. We've got a really stellar lineup over the next few hours. And we're going to talk about some really interesting issues, some very hot topics in the industry at the moment. And we're starting off with e-mobility, talking about the e-mobility landscape of the future. What will it look like? And what are the gaps for us getting to our current situation to what we want to see in the future? We'll be having 4 panel speakers to take us through that coming today. But first, we're going to do a quick introductory video. We'll be back in a minute.
Globally, the electric vehicle fleet is expected to grow by a factor of 8 or more by 2030. From about 30 million in 2022 to more than 240 million. Governments are realising the importance of mandating zero emissions vehicles, but many countries are not ambitious enough. How can we guarantee a widespread adoption of EVs and that charging infrastructure keeps up with the rapid pace? How can the EV driving experience be optimised? And what gaps are being overlooked? Find out the answers to these questions and more in our next panel. What will our e-mobility future look like?
Welcome back. And so to discuss some of those challenges that were just mentioned in that video, we've got 4 panelists here today. We've got Jaap, Senior Advisor at the Regulatory Assistance Program. As Senior Advisor to the Brussels-based think tank, Jaap focuses on smart EV charging and the European and national policies that maximise its potential for a clean, reliable, equitable and cost-efficient energy future. His work focuses on the services and policies that connect user and grid needs. Jaap, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Greta. Looking forward to the discussion today. Looking forward to the other guests as well.
As am I. Thanks, Jaap. So joining him, we have Felix, EV travel hacker, or also known as Electric Felix. And as a blogger, travel hacker and entrepreneur, Felix runs the website electricfelix.com, which helps people stay up to date on electric mobility and Europe's charging infrastructure. He's been featured on several podcasts and taken part in many panel discussions centered on the EV transition. So thank you, Felix, for taking the time to join us today.
Super happy to be here.
And alongside him, we have Jorg van Heesbeen, CBO and co-founder at Jedlix. Before founding the smart charging company Jedlix, Jorg worked in energy trading and demand-side management for Eneco, Autogrid Systems and Kubi in both the Netherlands and the Silicon Valley. He holds a master's degree in energy innovation management from a combined program at Utrecht University and Columbia. Thank you for being here today, Jorg.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Looking forward to the discussion and also the inputs from my other panelists. Thank you, Greta.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have Caro de Brouwer, Director of Network Development at Fastned. As part of Fastned's executive team, Caro is part of the company's top management layer. She's one of Fastned's most entrepreneurial executives and is responsible for rolling out the network in Fastned's 6 existing markets, as well as in new markets. Caro, welcome to the virtual stage.
Hi all, thank you. I'm very happy to be here. I look forward to all of your questions and interesting discussions that we'll have.
Okay, so let's go straight into it then. Felix, first up, how do you view the progress of the e-mobility revolution in Europe? Are we making the switch fast enough? What are our major strengths or weaknesses compared to other regions?
I think in Europe, what we're seeing is that we have quite some successful EV markets already. Of course, the Nordics are well known. The Netherlands is well known for having a lot of chargers and these things. But I think especially when you look at Europe as a whole, there's still so much work to be done, because the further you travel from home, wherever that home in Europe might be, traveling will just not be necessarily easy with an EV, especially depending on which one you have or available at the moment. And I think if you look at the States compared to Europe, then we're definitely well ahead, because in Europe you don't need a certain brand of vehicle to be able to travel. You can do it with any EV, I think, or at least I try. And I think if we look at a place like China, then we can really see that that Europe is simply, in my opinion, moving way too slowly. The people over at Bloomberg recently published a study on kilowatt hours sold at fast charging networks around the world, and they had to just take out half of all Chinese competitors to even show anything else in the world. So it just shows you that, of course, it's a big country, a lot of people, a lot of vehicles, etc. But seriously, the rest of the world really needs to step it up, and Europe is part of that.
Caro, would you agree with that? Do you think Europe needs to step it up, particularly in terms of fast charging?
Yes, absolutely. And I think what we'll move towards is indeed more fast charging along the major routes, because a car is obviously used, right? So when we use a car, we need infrastructure to build it. And it is a call for mainly European legislators, but also local governments, to just make ambitious and bullish plans, because there are entrepreneurs enough and companies who are willing to invest in it and take a leap here. So I fully agree with Felix. We have to step up, and there will be demand for that, because the cars are coming.
And obviously, on top of fast charging, we need to strike the right mix between destination, en route, home charging. How do you see that mix in the future, and how do we make sure we have the right balance?
Yeah, so fast charging, en route charging is really important, and it's like what Felix stressed. We're just only at the beginning. So the type of fast charging hubs we're seeing on motorway service areas now are really just the beginning. So we will need many more of these, not just for cars but for trucks. I mean, that's the next electrification wave that's coming. So for all the other places where cars spend time without the user, that's the most interesting bit, also from the power system perspective. So we need things like building codes to make sure that all residential parking spaces and parking spaces in office blocks can be equipped with charging points, so that you can just plug in your vehicle whenever you park, and your car is being charged without a need for you as a user to interact. So I think that's another element where policymakers have a key role to play. So it's building codes that sort of enable that, and obviously we need to mix. And maybe as an additional point on why we need so much fast charging, I think it's the key entry point for non-EV drivers. It's while they are driving, they see that charging is possible, that they can charge wherever they are in Europe. So we need both fast charging, but we definitely need many more charging points at homes and offices, shopping centers, things like that.
Thanks, Jaap. And Caro, talking about en route charging, do we need to solely focus on high power charging or fast charging, or are there also benefits to slow chargers, such as not overloading the grid?
So I think in the general mix, as Jaap just said correctly, we will need both, right? We will need slow charging, flexible, smart slow charging at home, at any destinations, at any place where a car is parked, and it can basically be used as an asset to the grid in both ways, right? It being charged without thinking, but also supporting the grid. However, en route, when we look at purely en route, there is just simply no case for having slow charging en route. Because if I want to drive from Amsterdam to, let's say, Madrid, spending 10 hours overnight on a highway resting area is just simply not done. I mean, it's not safe, it doesn't feel secure, it distracts you from the goal of charging, and it doesn't bring me where I want, and no one will actually do it. So if we develop that, no one will use it. So when we talk about en route charging, it will be fast. And when we migrate to fast charging, we are already with certainty, we can say that a charge of 300 kilometers will be under 10 minutes. The platform, the technological platforms for these cars have been confirmed and are in development. And if we look at today, already the mid-size cars, most mid-size cars that you buy today can charge 300 kilometers in about 15, maybe 18 minutes. And that will only get faster. So en route charging will not look like anything new from what we know, because fueling also looks like that, right? It takes you 5 minutes to fuel the car along the way. And in order to do that at the scale that we see today with all of the cars on the road, or the majority of the cars on the road being electric, these stations will also have to look like fueling stations. They will have drive-through lanes where there is constant movement. If a car charges for 10 minutes, that means in a 12-position hub, continuously someone will arrive and leave again. And that is something that we have to keep in mind when we design these stations, is that we don't design them for a 4% EV penetration that we see today in the Netherlands, but we have to design them for a 50, 60, 70, 80% EV penetration, because you invest in infrastructure that's going to last a while and you want it to be scalable like that. And when it comes to then overloading the grids, the same way, the grids need to be reinforced on these key corridors. However, we don't also need to overdo it, right? Because the likelihood of 12 cars arriving at exactly the same second with exactly the same zero state of charge is absolutely zero. So there is already balancing by the fact that cars arrive at different states of chargers and stay for a different time. And on top of that, we of course need to balance the grid with batteries on site, so we can shave some peaks. But in essence, we will need a lot of capacity along these main corridors. But surprisingly, in most of the countries, these main electricity corridors run pretty much parallel to the existing main road corridor network. So that is pretty convenient. We just need to make a plan and plan it out, and we will need years and time for that. Look at the Netherlands, where we're already facing issues. But we have to, as a society, plan for electrification in general.
Thanks, Caro. And Jorg, Caro just talked a bit about having a really seamless user experience. What else do we need to keep in mind, and what are some really important factors in guaranteeing a really convenient user experience for EV drivers, from everything from finding stations to paying to charging?
If I look at that topic, I would say start with the right data quality at the source. So if you are a large operator, you need to make sure that the availability of your stations, the uptime, etc., that works. That's the fundament, and that these feeds are available to whatever app a user has in his car or whatever. I think that's most critical. In my opinion, payments in mainland Europe is figured out. There was some improvement to do, whether that's roaming or direct payments. We're getting there, but yeah, uptime, data quality, that's key, making sure that you share it. Because if you don't, what will happen is that people will skip your stations. I charge mainly at home, but if I make a trip, I'd rather stop at a Tesla Supercharger or Fastned, which I know I can rely upon, that if I get there, that it works, compared to some other operators, let's say.
Thanks, Jorg. We've had a question from the audience. I might direct this towards Felix, see if you can take this one. In your opinion, will we still need intelligent charging station in 10 years' time, or will communication and billing be integrated into the car technology? What's your take on this?
Well, I certainly hope for better steering from the vehicle's point of view. So yeah, I expect when I arrive at the charging location that the vehicle actually knows where I should be going. But I also feel that maybe if you want to design just a very accessible EV, then maybe the way isn't to make that EV super luxurious and to have all these guidance systems. Maybe if the charging location is actually set up smartly and has proper guidance, then you don't need that much guidance in the car, because I still feel that we miss out on this part of just the analog part of traveling, because the thing with traveling is you go to where you haven't been before. And when you arrive at these hubs that you have never seen before and where you don't know what's going on, you don't know the operator, you don't know if your payment will be accepted. Yeah, you want this confidence that things will be okay. And yeah, signs with a price, just very basic things can help here. And yeah, I think that very slowly we're moving to that state. And 10 years from now, I expect most of those things to be there. But I really wonder about this. Yeah, how much will be automated in the vehicle and how much will be outside at these charging hubs? Because yeah, to play perfectly well together, to find the right price, to find the right charger, I think that will be a quite interesting game to follow.
Thanks, Felix. Does anyone else want to add anything to that point?
I want to second the price transparency, digital or not digital. I think when customers arrive on a site, you just have to know what you're getting, and the confidence that what you may see in your phone or on your car screen matches what is digitally show or what is locally shown, I think will only support the confidence in our industry for any consumer, and not just the first movers and the ones that already drive electric for 15 years, but also our parents and grandparents that maybe 60 or 70 years old but still drive,
Yeah, absolutely. We've had another question from the audience. One of the panelists yesterday said it's not a panel without someone asking, what about hydrogen? So a viewer has asked, it's already proven that only lithium-ion batteries-based EVs are possible, which, questionable, are they green and sustainable? Why not focusing on implementing hydrogen as an energy source? Jaap, do you think you might be able to take this one?
Yeah. Sure. So to start with, so hydrogen is not an energy source. It's a carrier, just like a lithium-ion battery is a carrier of energy. And when we talk about lithium-ion, we talk about sort of a whole range of different chemistries. We're also seeing a newer type of chemistry appearing where you need less critical materials. So for instance, cobalt-free batteries. A new wave of sodium-based batteries are coming. But I think we also need to keep in mind that by switching to chemical storage of energy, we can do away with a lot of the mining that we currently have in place to mine and dig up the resources that we need for a fossil-based system. Also looking at sort of the type of regulation coming into place in countries like Europe, but also in other regions in the world, recycling of lithium-ion is becoming a viable option also from a commercial point of view. So we're going to reuse those materials. Back to hydrogen. So hydrogen as an energy carrier is actually really inefficient compared to storing energy, electricity, chemically in a battery. So what happens is that you lose a lot of that energy in each and every conversion step. So to shortly answer the question, is hydrogen an alternative? No, it's not an alternative. It's a new problem. It might fit certain power system applications. So we definitely will need a lot of hydrogen in the power system, but likely not in transport, and the least likely segment will be passenger cars.
Thanks, Jaap. And Felix, I want to go into a point about that Caro mentioned before of, at the moment you go to a petrol station, you take 5 minutes to refuel. Even with fast charging, it would take a little bit longer than that. And we need to kind of redesign the experience a little bit and the sites that we have. How do you foresee that? What sort of elements do we need to keep in mind to make that experience more enjoyable for travelers and things like that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing because it was so funny that I recently saw this very new fast charging installation nearby Barcelona on the highway, where they are actually next to a fast charger installing a slow charger. And this just shows you that you have these, well, let's just say it out loud, oil companies that they want to do some fast charging on the side. But then by installing a slow charger like this, you introduce this huge risk of just off-putting anyone trying this out for once, because if there's this slow plug available, then people will simply use it when they don't know that it is slow, or they think that the price looks nice, but then actually nothing gets added, and you go to buy your ice cream, and after getting your ice cream, and yeah, nothing happened to your car. So I think it's so important that these places get designed well by people who know what they're doing. And in my opinion, but this is really not, not everyone in the business will ever agree with me, but yeah, charging hasn't got anything to do with refueling. So it is logical for us to emulate this refueling vibe, because that's what we have been doing for so long. But charging is essentially a very different thing to do. And even though it's getting faster and faster and stuff like this, yeah, for me it's really interesting that you have several players who really design it as if it was a gas station. Mercedes is just opening their new hub, and it is like a very shiny gas station, but then suddenly Mercedes only offers electrons. But what you can mainly see, in my opinion, is that hub is then just way too tiny. Like they build a very big roof, very wide, but also very narrow. So actually, as soon as you walk away from your car, you will still get wet. So yeah, I think the comfort element needs much more thought, and just the fact that people need a plug when the battery needs a charge. And yeah, as soon as you design for this luxury of having sort of a refueling vibe, then chances are that maybe you didn't add so many plugs because you need so much space. So I think there's a lot to say for building a huge parking lot with a huge amount of really fast chargers that can also really dynamically spread this balance, because every car has these completely different needs. And right now Europe already has, quite a decent electric fleet, and hopefully that fleet will be on Europe's roads for at least the next decade, maybe more. And so even 10 years from now, you need fast chargers that help today's vehicles very well. And if in 10 years from now you have these super fast chargers everywhere, but not that many, yeah, that will never work, because you just need many. That's gonna be, so my hashtag more plugs is my most favorite hashtag this year, because whenever I see a new fast charging station, I mostly just think I want more plugs. So I think that is really the challenge for this decade.
And Caro, would you agree with that when you said before we need to think in the future for 70, 80% penetration? Is that what you had in mind, more plugs? Is that the key?
Yeah, more plugs, and also looking at like streamlining the experience, like what you see when you travel a lot, which I also do. I think I've driven by now 300,000 electric kilometers in not even 5 years. You just often feel like I have to cramp in a space that's not fit for me, or I have to kind of go in halfway with my wheel on the curb and block literally everyone else that is coming. And that's when you, indeed, as Felix also hinted it, if you think of fast charging as I simply have to install a 40 by 40 centimeter hardware, then you're never getting anywhere. You have to think the complete picture. You have to think the system. You have to think about how people arrive. You have to look at how people arrive. So when you go to a station and you see people first get out of the car, then they have a look, then they go back to their car, then they take their charge card or their credit card, then they go back to the charger, then they plug. So you have to have an environment where all of that is possible, and look at people, how they use it, and how steer them into a usage that is not limiting others and is only smoothening the process. So I fully agree with Felix, is that we need forward-looking eyes to solve the problem, and we don't need to convert something that we already have. And indeed, electricity and fuel, it's a different business. Running a fuel station is a local business. You have a tank under the ground that gets filled, and you sell a product that you have stored locally. Electricity is a dynamic system. So, you can't store electricity like that locally, except for in a battery, but that's never going to store a whole day's worth of charge, right? So we have to look at it different, look at it as a digital product, as an experience. Apps have to be flawless, payment systems have to be flawless, screens have to be flawless, because it's not a physical product that we're selling. So yeah, long story short, I agree with what Felix says.
Thanks, Caro. And we've had a question from the audience asking about accessibility. Jaap, you might be able to answer this. What can we do for drivers who don't have access to private charging? The cost of ownership is significantly more for these drivers and exacerbated by the issue of people who might be disabled. What is the solution there?
Yeah, so I think we need many more charging options, like on-street charging as well. So you see some of European cities have been, developing on-street charging networks that really serve the needs of those that don't have private charging options. Besides that on-street network, we'll need sort of more workplace charging. We need more types of other public charging, including fast charging. But I think the key element is that anywhere you go, you as an EV driver should be able to also use energy services in a way that any private driveway owner can sort of benefit from. So if you look at sort of the single family homes with their own garage, maybe EV drivers in that situation are able to benefit from things like their own rooftop solar, from time of use pricing. So they might be able to use off-peak charging over the night. And we're just at the beginning to see things like off-peak charging rates extending to on-street charging stations. So for instance, in the UK and in Denmark, this is starting to appear. But if you look at sort of some of the other markets, it's still absent. So those that rely on the public charging network often also have to pay the highest rate. And that obviously needs to change. And there's no need to keep them out of that system. It's just we need the digital tools. And I think a bit extending on what Caro was saying. So e-mobility is a digital world. So we have the driver, we have the vehicle, we have the charging infrastructure, and we have the energy system, and all of these elements should be able to interact with each other. So we need things like technical standards to be able to communicate between devices and between energy system actors. But obviously we need to design based on that sort of user experience, things like apps or in-car interfaces that enable users to set, for instance, their charging preference. And then in the background, we can do optimization. We can do optimization based on time of use energy tariffs. We can use dynamic energy tariffs. We can use provide services to the grid. But I think we need to work harder to make sure that that smart charging isn't a thing just for those that have their own driveway, but becomes a thing for everyone, whether charging on street or workplace.
Jorg, what do you think about this? Do you think smart charging can help the issue of accessibility?
Yes, I think this definitely is the case, and there's plenty of work to do in the public domain. Although I have to say, making sure that payments, price transparency, roaming, I would have said that this had a high priority first compared to other options. But the time now we have solved that mostly. I think time is right for smart charging as well.
Thanks, Jorg. And we've had another question from the audience asking what would be the top need if EVs were part of a smart home? Jorg, you might be able to answer this as well. I guess we can interpret that as like, what is the biggest challenge of having an EV at home?
Well, if you have an EV at home, and then I assume you can charge at home, you are the lucky one, because this is super convenient. And if you have a long range car, you should be able to get 90% or more of the charging done at home in your own time. So that's super convenient. So that in a way is already a big asset. But then people who have EVs tend to have solar panels as well. So using the car for that or other tariff differentiations, that's the next step. And in order to enable that, we need to make sure that you can use your charger or car smart, and that the service and tariffs are there. So that's the next step after that.
Thanks, Jorg. And we've had another question asking, is the charging network really the barrier? Felix, you might be able to help this. Do you think people are still resistant to adopting EVs?
Yes, I'm afraid so. Especially when I publish my my ad hoc pricing stuff that I just find somewhere and then share. It is simply painful to see. If you go to the UK right now, or if you go to Germany right now, and you go there without local charging cards, and for example in Germany, many of the best charging cards aren't even available to a Dutch person, so they just don't let you register. Yeah, this is so unfriendly. And if you compare highway fast charging pricing to a diesel vehicle in Germany, yeah, that sort of evens out. It's sort of a level playing field. And this is completely absurd, because electricity in a German household is available at under 30 cents per kilowatt hour. So on the highway, this should never be sold at €1, which some companies actually do. And that's what I mean with this. If there was a big sign on the highway where you had all the energy prices in one list, so you had petrol, you had diesel, you have the kilowatt hour on the same sign, and you just see that, you know, the kilowatt hour is 50 cents, let's say, and the diesel price is, say, €2 per liter, which in Europe is quite common now. That is a price that shows people, oh, wait a second, what can I actually do with a kilowatt hour? Maybe they will try to puzzle around. And yeah, I think that this in most countries is still completely missing, even though in a country like France, when you get to the fast charging hub nowadays, there's a big sign with prices, but it's not next to the petrol prices. So most people will never even see that sign. And you want everybody to see that sign. It needs to be on the highway. It needs to be digital. It needs to be live. It needs to be solar powered to go down, etc. This is all so logical to do, and it's moving way too slowly. And this keeps a lot of people in their safe zone. Just, you know, yeah, I like my diesel. I don't need a charger, and I'll just diesel on. And I have nothing to say to these people with ad hoc pricing in half of Europe as it is right now. There's just no, and then we are still neglecting that EVs are mostly still seen as expensive to even purchase. So as long as that is the case, even though, you know, depending on where you get your vehicle and in which country, because there's some huge incentives. I saw some crazy prices in the south of Europe right now. But ad hoc pricing, go to Italy right now. It is cheaper to drive a diesel than to randomly charge your vehicle. This is not okay. It should be illegal. And yeah, if we don't fix that, we're never gonna get the masses, because this is my main point. Like, if you want every vehicle on the road to be electric, and I do, then, you know, obviously most of these vehicles will not charge at home, because I look outside from my home right now, and okay, I live in Amsterdam, so there's quite some public chargers. But when I drive around my neighborhood, most days I already have to drive several blocks away to even find one available plug. And yeah, that's Amsterdam with 7,000 or more public chargers in a tiny city. So yeah, there's a lot of work to do left, and public charging at the right price and transparent transparency about that price, in my opinion, it is like pretty much the only thing that really matters.
Thanks, Felix. I want to go into regulation of what you just mentioned there a little bit later, but first, Caro, do you agree that if such price comparisons were really in front of people's faces, that they would be more likely to make the switch?
Yeah, because now there is indeed a lot of myth that it's like super expensive, even though total cost of ownership is already lower. And I also do want to second Felix, is that prices have to be more transparent, and prices have to get down on key locations, and that can be done by opening up the market for competition, which is why these prices are high in countries like Italy, where basically only incumbent players have access to certain key sites. The same accounts for in my home country, in Belgium, for example, where in the French-speaking part of Belgium, the charging prices of the incumbent player are 30 cents higher than in the Flemish part, where they face competition of us. So, competition is one key element to make sure that prices are as low as they can be, because we still, of course, obviously invest in infrastructure that comes on top of the price of the electricity as such. But competition is a key driver, availability of alternatives, so that, you say, hey, well, I don't like this player, prices are not okay, I drive 20 kilometers further and I choose another one. And having the visibility and the chance to do that is absolutely key. But also communication, that prices just simply work different for an electric car, right? So you have a total cost of ownership is something hard to explain to average Joe, but you can give examples, like you'll never have to go to the garage to put oil in your engine, stuff like that. I think a lot of it is with experience, so we'll probably also have to wait, a couple of years until people have experience and share the experience with their peers. But the good thing of that is that works exponentially. At some point, if everyone tells 2 people, if you have enough people, it just goes awfully fast. So we do have to also trust a bit the process, but make sure that when people experience it, charging already today, they experience it in a good way, and they become promoters and ambassadors for accelerating to cleaner mobility.
Thanks, Caro. And talking about pricing, Jaap, what role does regulation play? For example, in countries like Italy, where diesel might be cheaper, can regulation kind of change that landscape? And also, on top of this, where does pricing signals fit in?
Mm-hmm. So I think where regulation plays a key role is in making sure that we have that transparency, so that prices are available to end users, not only on site, so on the motorway signs or on the charger, but also through apps, so that beforehand, or actually can take into account different prices when you're planning your EV trip. And I think if you look at the European level, so we've seen this major new legislation on the European level, which is called the Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Regulation. And it will enter into force in April 2024. And starting from that date, any new charger will need to have transparent pricing. It will need to support ad hoc payments. So that means you just show up at the charger and should be able to pay for charging without having to sign up. I think that's a major improvement. Also, if you look at other markets like the United Kingdom or Norway, or even the United States, where you have rules for public funding, those really drive sort of that accessibility in terms of transparency on pricing, transparency on availability, on clear pricing, on being able to pay with whatever payment method you prefer, which is probably a bank card you already have. And I think that's fine to have that in place. Then we get to the second element, and that's how much can EV drivers participate in electricity markets. And I think there we still need to sort of streamline regulation, especially looking at sort of at the European level. Regulation is in place to enable EVs to participate in the power system. But if you look at different markets, different countries, they are still lagging behind. Countries are lagging behind in things like smart meter rollout, which is a key enabler to be able to support time varying tariffs at home. And I think we need to solve that as well. But with those elements in place, then we can move to a more digital system where obviously you as a driver don't need to interact with time varying prices all the time. It's a service on your behalf that can sort of optimize the charging. And I think it's a vital part of getting e-mobility off the ground. Because if we don't introduce those price signals, we don't have a way to communicate sort of, are you charging at the right time or at the right location? And price signals are a very key element in sort of changing charging behavior, not just sort of short term, where am I going to charge today, but also on the long term. They can guide you towards locations where it's really beneficial for the power system if you would, for instance, connect your vehicle there during the daytime, because you will be able to absorb renewable energy at that site. So it's also vital that we ensure that sort of price signals work across the whole e-mobility ecosystem, so that EV drivers can work with them, smart charging apps can work with them, that vehicles themselves can sort of respond to those price signals, and obviously that operators can use them as a way to sort of optimize revenues on different locations, for instance.
Thanks, Jaap. And Jorg, would you agree that there's a lot of value in time varying prices?
I fully agree on that. I mean, that's our bread and butter, since we tend to focus a bit more on the charging at locations where there's plenty of time. But even I think at fast chargers or other side, this makes sense. Look at what Tesla is doing, and to make more efficient use of the infrastructure. And I think if the EV driver matures, gets more known with these concepts, that will steer demand in a way that we use this infrastructure more efficiently, which is good, because we have seen that we need many more plugs, but that there are also limitations in the grid, practical limitations that can be solved over time. But we don't have that much time to get to everybody driving EVs. So yeah, time incentives will help at any level of the grid.
Absolutely, thanks. And we've had a question from the audience asking, how will the charging landscape change with the introduction of zero emission zones and the expected increase in commercial electric fleets? Felix, do you want to take this one?
Well, walking around Amsterdam, I've been seeing moving trucks and even cargo bikes. They are exploding in the amount that I see them on the road. So the fact that Amsterdam has announced many years ago that already in 2025 they would introduce such a zone has really helped to speed up this process. And I guess probably half of all taxis driving around Amsterdam might be electric nowadays. At least it feels like this when I look at their license plates. So these things are paying off. But at the same time, you also see the government of Amsterdam ordering some diesel garbage trucks for the next decade. And this makes me really sad, because you can just order electric ones in Switzerland, and this is not so far. They could even drive them from Switzerland to the Netherlands, no problem. So yeah, I see mixed signals. I'm not happy with the big picture yet, but I like to see the growth, and I see that these local moving companies here, they have been shifting very early on, and some supermarkets in the Netherlands are already announcing that they will be going fully electric in the whole country with all their deliveries, even outside of these zones. So you can see that just introducing a zone in certain places in the country really helps to push it also outside of that specific zone. So I think that's a great part about it. And I think, in the Netherlands, unfortunately, we're having these grid issues. So if a company wants to build some chargers on their own site, they might run into a long waiting time to actually be able to do this. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to figure that out. And I think that local government has lagged in supporting them to do this in time and stuff like this. But yeah, we have been using our grid very efficiently in the past. and you're also not going to build a grid that you don't need. So yeah, right now we're seeing so much electrification. So we just need a way more flexible grid at least.
Absolutely. I think a flexible grid has been one of the key topics that keeps coming up in these sessions. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. I think we could have definitely kept talking, but thank you so much to the four of you for your really valuable insights. I think our viewers very much enjoyed this session. So thank you guys. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.